We are in week 2 of our series, Me to We. And really excited about this new series because what we're talking about something that we all experience on a regular basis, and that's relationships. Not just romantic relationships, but all kinds of relationships. And last week, Steve did a great job kicking this series off and talking about the importance of relationships. And I want to let you know that every single week we record the audio of these messages to put them on a podcast, but also we record the video of them. And all of our messages are at iconchurch.com/messages. So if you missed last week and you want to get caught up, this would be a great place to go to get caught up on really any of our messages. So if you're new and you want to see some of the older messages, that'd be another place to check out. But last week, as Steve talked, he talked about the idea that relationships are important. It's something that inherently, instinctively, we just kind of know that there's this value of relationships being good. And he talked about the idea that we is greater than me. That us together in community and relationship is better than me being isolated. And we know this. When you were growing up and maybe you're in school and you saw the kid that sat by themselves by the lunch table, there was this part of you that knew like, oh man, I would hate to do that. Or maybe that was you and you felt so alone. Or maybe you've experienced walking onto something like a big campus and there's people everywhere, but you feel so alone in a sea of people. We know when you ask someone, hey, how are you doing? And they say, honestly, I feel kind of lonely right now. Instantly we know, man, that's not good. It was almost like we were never intended to live isolated. We know that we is greater than me. And this is something that not only do we kind of inherently know this, we know this to be true, but also the ancient scriptures, the early Christian writers talked about this time after time after time. These are in the Hebrew scriptures. There's letters to churches that started in the early first century, and they talked about this. Here's just a few of the things that have been said about this in Christianity. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. How do you get better as an individual? You get around people that make you better. Or a brother is born for a time of adversity. That we know that when we're going through difficult times, that we need other people next to us. That a friend loves at all times. And that wounds from a friend can be trusted. That means when someone says something to you that's difficult to hear, if it's a true friend, you can trust what they're saying. You can trust that what they're saying to you is really they're trying to help you. That a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. That if you're by yourself, it's easy to become discouraged and to lose. But if you're with someone else, if you're with a we, that you're stronger together. We know this. This is something that's really important to us here at Icon Church, that we know that this is a difficult place to be in sometimes if you don't know people, if you don't have community and you walk into a room like this. And it's true across the board. I mean, what happens when you walk into maybe a new school for the very first time? Or you start a new job and you walk in and you don't know anyone. You walk into a place like this and what do all of us do? Our eyes start darting around to look for someone we know or someone that's like us. For me, I would be looking, where are the Packers fans? And I found out that Justin, the drums player, is a huge Packers fan. So Justin, come on, we got to stay together, right? So we look for people that we either know or that are like us. And we gravitate to them. Why? Because we know that, man, we is better than me. But I've got some bad news. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news here on a Sunday morning, but there's a problem with we. There's this problem with we, and it's not a good problem. It's a problem that, again, we all know. It's what I was talking about. It's we look for people because why? Because we takes work. It takes work to build community. It takes work to develop relationships. They usually don't happen just naturally. It takes effort to get to know someone, for them to get to know you. That's why here at Icon Church, we work really hard on the front end to make we happen a little easier. That's why this morning we had people get here really early to help park cars, to help park all of our volunteers off-site so you guys could have really good parking places. We talked to our teams about, hey, listen, it's going to be easy to gravitate towards the people you know, but people coming in for the first time, they're not going to know people. We want to encourage you to go meet them because we want we to take a little less work here at Icon. That's why we do things like last week, we did a small group rally. If you've recently started coming to Icon Church, we love this. We love getting together. We love talking and singing songs together and being encouraged and challenged. But it's great to sit in rows, but here at Icon Church, we believe that circles are better than rows. Rows are great, but circles, when you can sit down and ask someone questions and they can ask you questions and you can get to know each other, that's better. So we want to be a place that not just has some small groups, but a church of small groups. So if you're new here and you're not in a small group, we'd love for you to join one. You can get more information at the Info Center. Last week we had this big rally where people got to know the different small group leaders. Or maybe you went to that and you weren't able to find a small group that fit with your schedule or your location. And maybe for you, your challenge is, what if you started that group? What if you did some of the work to create we for other people? If you're interested in starting a small group, we would love to have you. Again, just stop at the Info Center. Say, hey, I'm kind of interested in looking into what it means to lead a small group. I'm interested in that, and they'll take your info. See, we at Icon Church believe that we is greater than me. But we also know, we're not stupid, that it takes a lot of work. But it's more than just work on the front end. And here's what all of us know that have been in relationships. And we all have different kinds of relationships with family and friends and romantic relationships and our parents. And that we doesn't just take work once, we take continual work. In fact, if you're not intentional about having and keeping good relationships, you're just not going to have them. And this truth right here, like we might read this and go, if we don't, work to develop and keep our relationships, they're going to dissolve. Sure. And it's easy to read this and to kind of disregard and go, yeah, Dan, I've heard this sort of thing before, and to kind of write it off. But I want to slow down for a moment, because we know this is true in some contexts. Because what happens with your best friends growing up in grade school and middle school and high school? You guys were like best friends, right? Did you ever meet a high schooler that they told you, man, we're best friends, we're friends for life, we are blood brothers, and they knew we're going to be bros, we're going to be friends forever. And then they go to college, and what happens? When was the last time you talked to your high school friends? For most of us, very little. Why? Because we weren't intentional about keeping good relationships. It just happens. That coworker that you love to work with, you have a good time and they move to another department. If you're not intentional about keeping a good relationship, what happens to that friendship over time? It just goes away. It dissolves. See, and that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean that those friendships or those relationships weren't real or weren't good or anything like that. It's just the nature of life. That if we don't continually invest into things, that's why long-distance relationships can be so difficult. Because if you're not intentional about keeping a good relationship, you're not going to have it. Now, the implications for this are huge when we really start to think about it. This means in your family, not just in your friends, with your spouse, with your children, across the board, if you're not intentional about keeping good relationships. Someone says, how are you being intentional in your relationships with your kids, your friends, your coworkers, kids, for your parents? Are you being intentional about keeping good relationships? Because if you're not, over time, that slowly, and this is what Steve talked about last week, that over time, we drift away from we back to me. You see, it takes work to get me to we, but even once we're there, it takes work to stay there, to be intentional, to continue to address that. You see, but I've had a lot of bad news so far. I've talked about how it takes work and it takes continual work, and these are all things that we know, aren't good, and we got to put some effort into it. But I've actually got some good news today as well. I know if it was like doom and gloom, like it's bad, it's horrible, nope, good luck, you're pretty much in trouble, see you later, and that was it, it'd be a little depressing. Not quite as depressing as the Packers losing to the Vikings a few weeks ago. But nonetheless, it'd be depressing. But I've got good news for you, because there's one simple question that I want to leave you with today that can radically change every single one of your relationships forever. It's a simple question, and I'm telling you, you might sit there and you might go, oh, surely there's not one. Now, that one question doesn't fix everything, but it sets you on a path, and it begins to move you in a direction away from me towards we, and it can help every relationship you have. In fact, this question is so important that this question is really what is behind the entire Christian faith. This question is behind the idea of what Jesus came to earth to do. This question has huge implications for every single relationship you have, whether it be a coworker, a father, a mother, a sister, your spouse. Every relationship you have, this question can transform those relationships. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, surely it can't be that easy, and you're wondering what this question is. And we're going to get to the question, but first I want to talk about how this question kind of works in real life. And I was trying to think, what is a context of a relationship that we can all relate to? Because some of us have really good friends, and some of us that wouldn't really apply so much for. And what's a relationship that all of us, can look to that'll address this question? Because again, what this question is going to do is this question will single-handedly move me to we. So if this question can help move me to we, what's a relationship that we can look like and we can look at and go, okay, I can see how it would work in a scenario like this as it moves me to we. And what the kind of relationship we want to talk about is family, because at the end of the day, we all have a family. Every single one of us have a family. Maybe it's a good family, maybe it's a not so good family, but we've all got family. We're brothers and sisters and children, and we have parents, and maybe you have a spouse, maybe you have kids. Our families all look different, but we all have one. And you see, early on, I talked about how the Christian faith is really framed around this idea, this question's behind all of it. There was actually an early church leader, and he wrote letters to different churches. He actually started several of them, and he traveled, and he couldn't just pull them up on Skype or something. So what he would do is he would send people to check out the churches. Hey, how's this church doing? How's that church doing? And then they'd come back with reports, and he'd be like, oh my gosh, they've got some serious issues. So he'd write them this letter, and he's like, okay, don't do this. Do this, make sure to do this, and I'm going to send these people to you and make sure to treat them like that. And then he'd send the letter out. He'd write another letter, and that's how he corresponded with these early churches that had lots and lots of issues. We've got good news. We're in good company. We've got issues, right? I know I have issues. And the early church, they had issues too. So he'd write these letters, and we can read these letters because many of these letters are found in our Bibles in the New Testament. And one of these letters contained a prescription for families. And he kind of framed this idea, this principle behind this question. He said, here's what it looks like in a family. And here's what I'd like to do. Usually I would just kind of read the passage for you, but here's what happens. If you've been in church for a long time, if you grew up in church like me, sometimes it's hard because we see a verse and we're like, oh yeah, I know what that says. And we kind of blow it off. We're like, yeah, I know that verse. I know where he's going with this. I know. Or if maybe you're not new to church, or maybe you are new to church rather, or maybe you've been burned by the church and you don't believe the whole God thing, you're unsure about that. So sometimes maybe putting up a scripture, you might go, I don't even buy that. Let's just look at the principles. Let's look at what this guy writing this letter to these people that are having some issues, let's just look at what he said. So I kind of have a summary here. This is what he says to families. So this is the summary of what he's writing. We can find this in the book of Ephesians. It was written to a church in Ephesus in modern-day Turkey. And he says this, husbands, here's what this looks like for you. This is the principle. Love your wives and be considerate. Some of the husbands were like, man, my wife is mean sometimes, right? That's hard. Wives, submit to your husbands. Do you know my husband? Right? We start thinking they're like, really? Children, obey your parents. The children think, my parents haven't had a good idea since 1980, right? My parents, they don't know anything. They're so dumb, but children, obey your parents. Parents, don't exasperate your children. And all of us parents think, are you kidding me? My children drive me nuts. This is for them. Surely they're exasperating me, right? We read this, and sometimes, man, this is hard. Again, we takes work. Now, here's the thing. As a pastor, I love what I get to do. I love getting to come and talk to you guys. But it's funny, sometimes I talk to people and they're like, oh, so you just work on Sundays, huh? No, I actually work other days too, believe it or not. It's just part of what I do. This is one thing that I do. One of the other things that I have the pleasure of getting to do is to talk with many of you guys. People will call into the church, and usually when people call the church, they're not just like, hey, I'm having a great day. I just want to give you a heads up. Things are great. My marriage is healthy. My finance, my job is going incredible. A lot of times when people call the church, it's because there's difficult situations going on, and I get to kind of get those calls. So I want to give you a word of warning, because as we look at these, there are problems that we all have with our families. And I get to hear some of those problems that families have. And as we look at these, there's one of these up here. I'm not going to tell you guys which one, but there's one on here that women especially typically don't really like too much. But we're going to forget which one that is. But there's one that ladies, when you hear that, the submit thing, that word, the S word, sometimes some of you kind of cringe, right? Because in church, sometimes you've kind of been beaten with that verse, right? And sometimes I get these calls, and I just want to give you a word for warning. If you're a husband and you ever like call me and you're like, you're having problems in your marriage, and you're like, oh, my wife, she's mean, and you remember this verse, and you're like, oh, and she doesn't submit. Yeah, like I know that one's in there, right? Like I'm going to trick him because he's a pastor and he has to agree with that. So I'm going to use the verse thing. And you're like, yeah, she doesn't submit. That's the problem. Here's how that conversation is going to go. I just want to give you a heads up, lest you want to go that direction. My question will be awesome. Oh, yeah, Paul. Yep, okay. Do you know how that verse starts? Do you know the first word in that verse? Jesus? Like if you don't, it's okay. It's always a good bet. If you never know the answer in church, just go with Jesus. It's good enough. It's close. But no, let's look it up. So this is actually, I'm going to show you the actual verse. It's in Ephesians 5:22. It says, wives, submit to your husbands as you do to the Lord. Okay, so what's the first word there? It's wives. Yeah, wives. She's one of those. She's a wife. She needs to submit. And here's how that conversation can go. Okay. Paul, when he wrote this verse wasn't written to you. Because you know what you are? You're a husband, and she's a wife. So this is just an idea to husbands out there. There's a verse for you. Why don't you listen to that verse? And wives, why don't you pay attention to this verse? Wives, I've got your back, right? Like ladies, I feel you, I understand. That's how that conversation will go. Because here's what we like to do. We like to look at everybody else's issues and their problems, and we like to find really good verses like this to get them with, right? Instead of going, okay, what's my job? Oh, my job's to love my wife and to be considerate, right? Because really all of these verses, all of these instructions on here, let's put them back up here. Every single one of these, husbands, love your wives. Wives, submit to your husband. Children, obey your parents. Parents, don't exasperate your children. All of those are practical applications to one main idea. There's one principle behind all of this. And then Paul goes, here's what that looks like in a family. Here's what it looks like for husbands. Here's what it looks like for wives. And this is what it is. He starts with it in verse 21. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So he starts off that whole idea. Verse 21 starts and he says, here's what I want you all to do. Submit to each other. Wives, here's what that looks like. Husbands, here's what that looks like. Kids, fathers and mothers, here's what that looks like. But at the end of the day, you're supposed to submit to one another. The big idea, the principle behind the application is the one of mutual submission. Mutual submission. What would it look like in a family that a wife submits to the husband as the husband submits to the wife? As children submit to their parents, get this is tricky. As parents submit to their kids. Now that doesn't mean we give them everything they want. That doesn't mean we submit to their will. But what it means is we realize, you know what, my desire is to put me first, but I'm going to try to see what my kids need. It's really asking, it's saying this, it's saying, I'm here for you. It's looking at our children, our spouse, and all of our relationships and saying, I'm here for you. What I want to do is I want to take who I am and what I have and leverage that for you. I want to take the power and the authority and the resources that I have and leverage that for someone else. I want to leverage that for you. I'm here for you. I'm willing to leverage me for us. I'm going to leverage my power and authority, what I have, because I believe that community, that we, is better than me. See, that's the principle that Paul was getting at. That's the principle that this question is all about. It's driving us to mutual submission. And this question, I'm telling you, it's going to change everything. And it's going to seem really simple. And the temptation is going to be, well, that's it? I mean, sometimes we come into church and we like to be like really confused by the pastor, and we're like, oh, what does that mean? And we go out and we don't have to do anything. But I want to make it simple and I want to make it applicable, because the idea is if we come in here and we hear things and we walk out those doors and we don't change, we've wasted our time. So our mission here at Icon Church is to help people become more like Jesus. And if you can get this question, trust me, your life will become more and more lining up with his way of life. And the question is, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? Here's what I want you to do. Everybody say it with me. What can I do to help? Painful, I know. Like some of us were like, what can I, I know it's hard. I get it. Let's try it one more time. What can I do to help? Here's the idea. I challenge you to go into work next week, okay? You go into work on Monday, and your boss, I get it, he's a jerk, I know. But you go into work, and you go to your boss, and you say, hey, listen, I know you've got a lot going on in life. I know this is a big place to kind of run and manage. But I wanted to check in, and I just want to know, is there anything I can do to help? I know it might not be in my portfolio. It might not be in my list of expectations. I just want to let you know if there's anything you need, I'm here to help. And watch how that changes relationships at your workplace. You go to your coworkers and you say, hey, listen, looks like you have a lot of work, and I know you have some stuff going on in life. Can I take any of that from you? Is there anything I can do to help? Or get this, husbands, right? Okay, when you come home, right, your wife's there and she's stressed out, and she walk in, and it's going to be difficult, I know. And you say this, you go, sweetie, I know you're stressed out. Is there anything I can do to help? The laundry, is there dishes I can do? Can I help you? Can I take care of the kids? Is there anything I can do to help? I'm telling you, husbands, this will change your life. This may, over time, make your family larger too. So I apologize if that happens. Ladies, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, if you learn to make this part of your everyday vocabulary with your wife, it will change your relationships, right? Like, it will change everything. Wives, if you see your husband come in and he's tired, he's exhausted, and man, he's frustrated at job and all this stuff, and you just listen and you don't tell him how to fix all that stuff, because we don't like that so much. But like, if you don't, like, here's what you need. Oh, that's simple. You just tell your boss this. And if you just listen and go, man, that really stinks. I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do to help? And we're guys, we're super stubborn. You don't have to do anything anyway. Like, we're like, no, I'm good. I'll take care of it. I'm a man. Like, you don't have to do anything anyway. But asking tells us, hey, you're listening, you care. You're willing to leverage who you are for me. Or even better, if we have any kids in this room, maybe, you're middle school, high school, or college students, maybe even just come home from college, and you bust this one out on your parents. You want to talk about not having to do anything? If your kids walked in the room, came home from school, put their bag where it was supposed to go, not like on the floor, if your kids are anything like mine, and they come up and they're like, Mom, Dad, is there anything I can do to help? Kids, you definitely won't have to do anything, because your parent will go into a coma. They'll like fall over speechless. And okay, I just wanted to check. That's it. I just want to see if there's anything I can do. Or even better, if our kids, imagine, kids, if you're in this room, college students, wait till your parents have company over. The boss is over, the neighbors are over, they're having a dinner party, and you walk in the room, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there anything I can do around the house? I just wanted to help. You'll get to walk away, and I promise you, the second you leave, everyone at dinner will be like, what? You are a parenting God. Teach us your ways, oh parent. It will change everything in your relationships. If we can learn to leverage this question, is there anything I can do to help? See, this question I said earlier is behind the Christian faith. This is the question. Jesus went to God and said, man, those humans down there, they're pretty jacked up. Is there anything I can do to help? The Bible tells us that while we were yet still sinners, Christ died for us. That Jesus came not to be served, but to serve. Asking this question, what can I do to help? When he prayed before his crucifixion, he prayed, Father, if there's any other way around this. But at the end of the day, not my will, but your will be done. Is there anything I can do to help? And in our messed up lives, Jesus asked this question and stepped in and changed everything. If we can learn to ask this question in all of our relationships, if we can learn to just step into a relationship, what can I do to help? With our friends, with our work, and all the relationships we interact within, if we can begin to grasp this idea, it has the power to change everything and move us from me to we. From focused on my needs and what I want to. I would rather have value relationship than what I want. And you may be in this room, and if you're a Christian, Jesus, he gave us that example, and he gave us that mandate that this is the way we're supposed to live. That we love God and we love others, and loving others means laying our lives down for them to serve other people. And if you're in this room and you're like, man, that verse stuff, like I don't think that's inspired. I don't believe that's the word of God. I just want to challenge you, just try this. Just try this and see how that changes your relationships. Because I believe that it has the power to change everything, to move us from me-focused to we. I want to leave you with one more thing. With one more thing that is really important. Because this is a great thing to like hear in a room like this and go, okay, and I get this. When you leave, you're going to feel like that. Like you get home and you're like, oh, I should probably ask, but I don't want her to think I'm asking just because the preacher told me to. And, just get over that, It's okay. But it's one thing to ask when we're encouraged, we feel good. We're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. But it's another thing when we don't want to ask this. And in fact, when you don't want to ask this, in fact, when you want to ask this least, is when you need to ask it most. When you're most focused on yourself, when you're having a bad day, when you're stressed out, this will be the last time you want to ask this question. And when you feel like asking it the least, is when you actually need to ask it the most. I want to challenge all of us to go out from this place. How could our families be different? How could our workplaces be different? How could our relationships and our friendships be different if at times when we wanted to ask this question the least, we actually decided to ask anyway? We would sit there and look at someone's eyes and say, is there anything I can do to help? Can I leverage who I am for what you need? It has the power to change everything. So I want to challenge you to go out from this place and to do that. I'm going to close in prayer and have one final announcement.